thermonuclear war that has built up to a very intense degree. Also, the developments in Germany, which could mitigate that, and Mr. LaRouche's analysis of this, and the fact that we are the only ones in the United States actually turning on the alarms of the danger that this thermonuclear war right now is in a countdown situation. And it's also made clear in this letter that because of the role and the leadership that we're playing right now, that our enemies are totally unhappy that we are still in existence. We know that we are in the crosshairs of attacks from our enemies, and the result of this has been an increased difficulty in terms of what we need to do to pull together the resources. And of course, the letter is very clear, a request for people to dig in, so I'm going to try to send this out tomorrow, but look in your email for this letter, which came from LaRouche PAC earlier today, entitled "We Could Win, but only if you help us now." Secondly, on the website, we have a leaflet that was posted up a couple days ago, which is according to, I'm sure, the theme of what will be discussed here this evening as well. I presume it's entitled "LaRouche Oust Merkel and Obama Now." Third, basically, we are continuing our drive on Glass-Steagall. Of course, we have the countdown for a grease blowout at the end of this month. My friends who are working on Capitol Hill, which of course includes my wife, Rochelle Asher, and Stu Rosenblatt, indicate to me that we now have 60 co-sponsors on H.R. 381, which is the bill for the reinstatement of Glass-Steagall. Fourth, obviously, we have the BRICS petition drive. That's crucial. I know we got a few dozen signatures today at a successful deployment in Manhattan on Wall Street. And last, I'll just mention before we start here the call this evening, we're all anxiously awaiting the Schiller Institute Paris conference that will be occurring this weekend. And while I don't have details of the specific coverage that will be on LaRouche PAC, I've heard earlier today that this is going to be prominently reported. Apparently the agenda is extraordinary. So this is a follow-on, in a sense, an international follow-on to our conference last week in New York. So I would ask that people be on the lookout for the coverage of this, which is coming up this coming weekend out of France. So it's 9:05. I'm going to officially launch the call to get Mr. LaRouche on. So here we go.
This conference is being recorded.
So good evening, everyone. This is John Asher in Leesburg, Virginia, welcoming you back for our fourth discussion with Mr. LaRouche, extraordinary discussion here on the LaRouche PAC Activist Conference call. So, Lynn, are you there here this evening? Are you with us? Can you hear me okay? Hello, Lyndon. Are you on the call there? This is John Asher.
Yes, I'm on the call.
Okay, excellent. All right, Lynn, we've got our forces are assembling now on the call. And so I wanted to ask you, first of all, if you wanted to make any preliminary remarks first before we go on and start to take some questions.
Well, a general observation is, I think, is sufficient. We have gone for 5 rounds, I think, right now, and we're getting very significant development, expansion, more broadening of what we're doing, and this is all very good. And I think we're getting also into new territories in terms of subject matters. Probably, I think there's a musical thing coming in, a voice matter, or things like that. So I would not be surprised to see the novelty relative to previous experience coming into play here.
Okay, well, okay, very good. And so I'm going to turn on the question and A queue.
Q&A session started.
And just as a way of just instructions for people who are getting in the queue, to get in the queue to ask a question to Mr. LaRouche, you will hit *6. What I ask you to do is to, when you are asking a question, I would ask you not to use a speakerphone. It's very important just because We want to get the best possible voice clarity, that you speak distinctly and as loud as you can, really make sure that you can be heard. And then we are also asking people to ask a question, and we were trying to get to as many people as we can in terms of the discussion. And so we're going to begin with our first question up here this evening. Everybody could at least state their first name and where they're calling from, because I think it's very helpful for everybody on the call to get a sense of the geographical distribution of our movement throughout the country. So we're going to start with our first question here this evening.
Okay.
Oh, hello. This is Linda LaRouche. I'm from Northville, Michigan, just outside of Detroit. I'm excited to be talking to Mr. LaRouche this evening. My daughter is just finished 8th grade, and it's been an especially frustrating year with the Common Core American History teaching, and my kids have my daughter all about global warming as it occurs, and fifth grade fellow, and they were not even able to talk about fitting an orchestra in the district. Looking at the high school David Petition International Baccalaureate high school program, and I'm weary of it, and there's a lot of folks who promote the program from a Stephanie Rose.
Linda, I'm having a difficult time understanding you clearly. Can you just speak up a little bit?
Okay, I just wanted to know, looking ahead at high school, my school district is pushing International Baccalaureate, and there's folks from Golden Staff to push this program, and I wanted to get Lynn's thoughts on what this program is. What can we do to reverse this cultural deficiency?
Okay. All right. Well, I got the general, Lynn, I have almost the general drift of it, but I couldn't quite understand it. Could you hear it at all? I could barely hear it.
I could barely hear it.
Okay. Well, I think the general question was, and Linda, you can try to get back in the queue, but she was asking generally, she was referring to her daughter who was in 8th grade, and really asking about the nature of education, and from what I could understand, what type of education program is actually appropriate. I think that was the general topic area anyway.
I think the appropriate kinds of education for younger children, for example, but for children generally, is not doing anything as popularly done now. I think there are only a few people in the total population who, as parents, who have children who really are trained and developed in order to deal with the challenges that the process of education is supposed to bring out. This is a sort of a criminal thing that's being done in the educational system generally. And if a parent has the good fortune to have a child who really is up to standard by what we used to call standard, that's almost a miracle. But obviously our intention must be to correct that problem. We need to have a revision of the general process of education of children in all integrals. I mean, you've got the very young ones, you've got those in middle age as youth, and you have the ones who are going into, say, graduating from a college. But these are all distinct in their behavior, and they're also distinct because of history. That is, in each of these cases, which you start from a very young child who is going to some kind of schooling, and then going to one who's entering a university or something like that, you find that the quality of the student's education is deteriorating generally, and so each generation of children and young people is actually being, with very rare exceptions, which are fortunate, the problem sinks, and that means that the problem has to be addressed on a general scale. There are ways of getting at this problem, but they're not the customary ways which are practiced in most educational institutions. we certainly need a program of education which brings these young people up to the level of the ability which they need for future life.
Okay, all right. Well, that lead us into our second question here. Here we go.
Hello, Mr. LaRouche, can you hear me? This is Tony from New York.
It's weak, but I can hear you.
Okay, thank you. I'll try to speak up. I'm delighted to have the opportunity to ask you this question because I am on the trail of scholarly justification for Bach's championing of 430 as the ideal tuning pitch. Years ago, I read that Bach and Kranz both advocated 430, but I haven't been able to find the scholarly sources to demonstrate this. Could you give me an idea of where to look?
Yeah, we have, based essentially around Manhattan, we have now a program which is coming into shape, which includes people who are not fully developed and some people who are fully developed. And the supervision of the choral supervision is excellent. And we are getting progress, and we're practicing it in the city of New York. That's our best spot right now, and I think it's easy to understand from your experience exactly how that works, that New York is the actual intellectual center of culture in the United States. There are exceptions to that case, but in general you can say that New York City is the center of human culture in the United States. And we need a program which studies the best work coming out of New York as such in education, and then we have to see what the problems are in the New York educational process in order to perfect it.
Okay. All right, and Lynn, he was also, I think I heard him refer specifically to the question of the lower tuning, which I know that you probably have heard. There's been quite a bit of stir around that recently in our activities in New York.
That has been one of my war-making activities in most of my living life. I've always been, on that. I understood it. It came partly because of my parents and other relatives were musicians of more or less qualified means. My father, for example, had an excellent tenor voice and was a trained one, and things. And my Scottish grandfather also had an excellent bass voice. So we did, in the family, we did have some understanding. And around the friends I had, who were musicians and are musicians today, who were professional in this matter, with their help and with the help of great musicians who I've been able to work with, like the case of Norbert Brynin, who was really an exemplary figure in our time, now long since deceased. But we do have resources to which we can search out and gain the kind of musical program and musical training which is required for the development of the mental powers of the individual citizen, young and old alike.
Okay, excellent. Okay, we're going to take the next person up here.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you.
Yes, Mr. LaRouche, my name is Faz, and I'm from Detroit, Michigan. I've had the opportunity to talk with you when you were in Metro Airport back before the first Gulf War, and I asked you a question about Iraq at that time. It's very nice to hear you again, sir. My question is this, that when I talk to people who are unfamiliar with the material that this organization has put out, when I mention the British Empire, I get people staring back at me like, what? Weren't they bombed essentially? And so they want substantiation of, okay, this is truly an existing force that's still out there, still doing things. What would I say to address that? So it's sort of an introductory question for someone.
Yeah, well, I think I very much, I'm steeped in that concern in particular for various reasons because of my international activities. I've been working in various countries in the planet, more or less, and so therefore I've come into much of this thing, and I have experience from that standpoint, which is relevant. The British problem is a complicated one, but it's also essentially an evil one. That is, there are people in the British Isles and so forth who have all kinds of variegated types of skills, some virtuous, some less so, and some rotten, some evil. And generally, we can, from experience, I or people in my degree of experience can pick up what the different types are of these British cultures. And most of them are impaired. I mean, for example, this includes the Scottish. I have a Scottish background, for example, family background, among other things. And you can tell the difference in the British Isles, how different parts of the British Isles respond in particular to their local cultures or their special kinds of cultures. And then you find that most of them can be very useful, can have noble intentions. But I wouldn't like to say that the British monarchy or the British imperial powers are anything but evil.
Okay. All right, we're going to take the next question up here. All right.
This is Dennis from Metro Phoenix. You hear me?
I hear you, yes.
Okay, I have a question and a comment. A few sessions ago, you spoke about Albert Einstein and how what you thought about him, and I was going to ask the question but didn't have the opportunity to ask you what you thought about Nikola Tesla and his contributions to science. And then I wanted to make a comment about organizing.
Well, this is an interesting question because it has variegated aspects to it. Some of it is significant, and the attempt to sort out the implications of various approaches to this question is an important question in itself. Einstein, for me, is particularly important because he was the only scientist during the 20th century, the period of the 20th century, who was actually competent in science. You had other people who had skills in science, and I've known some of them who had a great degree of skills in science. But Einstein was absolutely is unique. That's the way you can sort of look at it, because you had what you have is the problem. To make it explain exactly how this works, civilization, modern civilization, starting from people like Nicholas of Cusa and people like that, progressing up through the ages, we have a record of progress of mankind's understanding of scientific principle. Kepler, for example, is extremely important. Extremely important even still today. We're now in a new period where we're going into a galactic system. That is the development of a galactic system which man will rely on for the maintaining of the water supplies required by mankind on Earth. These kinds of things. So we're going through a period of revolutionary understanding of what the word science means. So we go through a period up to the 20th century. Now, with the 20th century, with developments in the 20th century, including particularly some evil people from Britain who destroyed the meaning of science. We had people who were, Einstein was the only man called a scientist who had an honest understanding of the meaning of the word science. The other people had scientific skills, but they didn't have a comprehensive view of what the meaning of science per se means. Einstein did, and we are hoping that we can get things in that direction. For example, like the galactic question, that mankind has to now move out so that we depend for our water supplies, for example, in our system, on the question of the galactic system. And that's the way it has to work. We have not yet gotten into that. We're looking at it, and we can look into it. We're having things that are happening in China. China is moving very advanced, relatively speaking, in terms of how the galactic system works. It's not a fully galactic system, but in China, that work is being done as it's not being done in any other part of this planet. These are the kinds of considerations which you can explore and pick your choice, so to speak, of what you think you would like to get at the most.
Okay, great. We'll take another question up here.
Hi, I'm Charlie. I'm in San Diego. And can you hear me okay?
I'm getting distortion.
But go ahead.
Is that any better?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. I've got two. You can pick to choose one or both. What is your position on thorium reactors for nuclear power generation or desalination? And what weak points in the imperialist structures are likely to trigger a break in confidence in their facade for the Zeus system, either domestic or international? And where is LaRoucheSupport strategizing to attack?
Well, the first thing we've got to deal with, the fact is that we've got to look at the increase of the energy flux density represented by human capability, like the scientific driver or the skills and so forth that are mankind, a human being has the power to go to a higher level of achievement. And that means that should be general. The problem has been, to understand the thing relatively, that there has been, over the course of the 20th century, a long road throughout the 20th century, up to the present time and so forth, of a degeneration in the intellectual capabilities of the people of the 20th century. The problem is now, how are we going to face the issue of solving that problem, of getting rid of the degeneration? For example, look at the case of the employment of our citizens, or the non-employment of our citizens. What we are doing is we are destroying the very life and means of life of the citizens of the United States. You have a few diminishing numbers of privileged people who maybe should not be privileged, who are sucking the blood out of most of our economy, of our people. That's wrong. So our prime thing is to turn this thing around so the direction of mankind's advancement in terms of the average human being, through education, through means of practice and so forth. The need now is to turn around the case. So we stop doing what we've been doing during the 20th century, with the wars of the 20th century and so forth put in. There's a period which, in contrast to the 19th century, the 19th century was a century of progress. At the end of the 20th century, or the end into the 20th century, became a direction of decline. And our concern must be to return the human culture to what had been earlier, as in the 19th century, to turn that back and to get mankind into a higher level of skills, of understanding, in scientific capabilities, for example.
Okay, and for our participants this evening, what Mr. LaRouche has cited is also fully documented in the new issue of Executive Intelligence Review that just came out today, entitled 100 Years of Stupidity, the Cesspool That Was the 20th Century. So you can read more about that in the latest issue. So we're going to take the next question up.
Well, thank you. Hi, my name is Rick, and I'm calling from upstate New York, and it's a great privilege to talk with you, Mr. LaRouche. I have a great respect for your work and the work that you've done over the many years. We have many problems in our nation, and it seems that we've allowed our government and our national community to fall away from the basics, the fundamentals that have made our country strong in the past. For example, our advantage is we have adversity. We have the melting pot, people from all over the world and with different perspectives. And when we come together in a meeting of the minds, we can be stronger than the sum of our individual parts. But we ignore that. We instead of having, say, ambassadors, we now allow the military to be in the position or the role of the ambassador, and they don't have the same perspective, and they make serious mistakes. There's so many problems that we could talk about, fundamental issues that are severe, and yet they're clearly evident. Your organization has talked about them, exposed many of them, and we've even come up with ideas and solutions. But what we don't have is the unifying force. The media has failed us. The media has a fundamental bias. Banking has a fundamental bias. The antitrust laws are not in effect. So my question is, do you see any unifying event or unifying person in the near future that can actually bring our country back together again and fix all these problems?
Well, I think, yes. I have a very clear idea of what is actually feasible. The problem is the controlling forces in the United States today, including cultural forces, because our cultural forces, like the education system and science and so forth, all kinds of things that should be, great contributions to the education of the population and to their practice. That has been largely destroyed. If all you have to do is look at the deterioration of the income of the typical citizen in the United States, the conditions of life of the average citizen in the United States has been accelerating at a downward rate, especially since, well, I'll say the beginning of the 1970 period on, of the 1980 period more particularly. The Bush family, for example, the Bush family's interest and investment in our governing bodies has been one of the chief sources of corruption of the United States up to this day. And we can only hope that we could get, say, a better kind of president, which is possible. We've had good efforts, attempts at that time at least, to do that. That's one part. But the other thing is we've got to understand what mankind is. And that's what is really needed. I mean, because many people can see that this is wrong and that's right, or maybe right. But we need a better standard to measure exactly what it is we must achieve for the future of mankind, particularly in the United States. It's a good place to start, and to compare it with what's going on in Europe and so forth. But that's where we are. We need a new definition, which means we need, actually, by our standard, we need a change in government. Now, we have a possible prospect of a new presidency coming forth in the course of the period ahead. The problem is that the danger is that the Obama administration will bring us into a global war from which almost no human being will survive. And if that happens, and that could happen within the next month, then you would have a situation where there'd be a question would humanity as such survive a general thermonuclear war, which is what we're up against. And Obama's now at the point of pushing us, on behalf of the British, of course, to get us into committing that kind of genocide against ourselves. And so, therefore, these kind of considerations are important. But what's important is, for us, above all, is to realize how we got into this mess coming out of the 20th century and how do we get out of this mess which the 20th century has put us into.
Okay. All right. I'm going to take another question up here.
Hello.
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 Okay.
Hello, how you doing? Can you hear me, Mr. LaRouche?
I hear you now.
Okay, thank you. One of the questions I want to ask is that about the crimes that Obama has committed against humanity. We already know that, you know, he did murderous crimes, treason. They got all the evidence they need to impeach this man. I'm still don't understand how come everything is still being prolonged. It's like keep him in now, and everybody just got to wait and see what's gonna happen. You know, I feel like they got enough evidence against him. Why they just don't get rid of him? Because you're saying that, you know, he need to be out of there at least before July the 4th comes. But what if he's still in there? And then, you know, August comes, he's still in there. You know, I just feel that they're kicking the can down the road, such as with the economy situation, as with impeaching Obama. They just keep prolonging and kicking it down. When is it gonna end?
Well, let's try to end it immediately. The possibility is there. First of all, we're on the edge of an actual thermonuclear war throughout the planet. Right now, the United States, under the direction, or the putative direction, of Obama, is heading us for a thermonuclear war on a global scale within a period of probably the next month. That's the fact. Now, that can be adjusted, that can be influenced for actions which can occur, which can prevent this from occurring. But we've got to make sure that they do. Those events are straightened out as needed. But the longer period is to recognize that what happened is, in the 20th century, after the 19th century, beginning the 20th century, there has been a long wave of ups and downs, but the most direction is commonly down in terms of the conditions of life of people. There's been far more technological capabilities introduced, but they're merely technological. They're not scientific, they're technological. And in the most part, you'll find more and more, especially since, well, shall we say, 1980, there has been a more or less consistent direction of down, worse and worse, throughout the United States itself. You have, however, improvements in China. China is the leading nation in progress on the planet right now. In other words, of all the planets of the Earth, China now has the greatest rate of progress. Now we're having India is showing similar progress. Other parts of the world are showing progress of significance in nations in South America. That's maybe not very impressive, but the very fact that it's progress is progress. And therefore what we have to do is focus on the need. You know, we've got people who lack education. They lack skills. They lack competent employment. They lack the means of maintaining a decent life. They're no longer protected against disease as they used to be, even before. And these things have to be done. And I think it will also be done with one fell swoop. I think that we have to get rid of Obama, throw him out of office, and try to get a new presidential system. Now, I don't think that's just a president. What we need is a presidential system. In other words, there's a group of people gathered around a person called a president, who's qualified to be such a president. And this team of people become the means, working together, to move this condition of life of the citizens of the United States in general, and other nations as well, in a direction which will rapidly, at an accelerating rate, bring about some kind of decent improvement in life and to save us from the threat that Obama now threatens. If Obama is not thrown out of office in the near future and continues the policy he has now, we're headed for thermonuclear war. And that is probably as early as within a week, within a month, rather. And if that is not prevented, then the problem is that most of the human species will disappear.
Okay. All right, we're going to take another question up here. And here we go. All right. Hello? Okay, hello? You've been unmuted. Well, I think they don't, yeah. Okay, I'm not sure they don't know they've been unmuted. So I'm going to remute them. We're going to have to go back to that person. All right, so, all right, we'll take another person up here. Here we go.
Mr. LaRouche, this is Bill in Wisconsin, and I have a question, actually two. What is your opinion of the Bilderberg organization, and what is your position and opinion concerning the current occupant of the papal throne, Francis Bergoglio?
Yeah, okay. Well, I don't, on the first count, I don't think much of it at all. It's a failure. Now, on this case of the papacy, discussing the papacy is a complicated matter. First of all, it reflects, on the one side, an attempt to create a Christianity which might be measured against the standard of the famous figure Nicholas Cusa, who was the founder of the form of Christianity which made the best contributions to mankind. And he was, of course, nominally a Catholic, but the term Catholic has come to mean a number of other things as well, quite sharp differences. So the question of how mankind sees man and sees what the meaning of human life is, which means that we are not animals. We human beings are not animals. Some people behave like animals, but that's not what they're supposed to do. We all live and we all die. Now, dying is not really something we can complain about. If we think it's unjust or should not happen or can be prevented, that's a point. But the point is that we know in history that two things about mankind. First of all, no animal is capable of being a human being. No matter how sweet the animal is, how lovable the animal is, it's not human. And what we desire is to have human beings, and there are some great people. Vinansky, for example, the famous Russian figure, is an example of this kind of outlook. Other people have had it, Nicholas Cusa, particularly. But the question is, how do we solve this question? How do we say we've got the right choice? Well, I would say that no, the present Pope is probably a very significant improvement over some of the things that have immediately gone on before. I don't know how good he is, but I'm sympathetic to the idea that hope that what he will do will be useful to mankind. And I don't limit this to the Catholic position. I look at the whole thing from mankind. How is the idea of religious belief, whether it's formally religious or not, whether it's simply the idea of what the purpose of mankind's existence is to be? And that's what the whole thing means. That's what Christianity meant. What is the meaning of human life? given the fact that every human being is sooner or later going to die, and most of them will die in a fairly early period. So what is the meaning of human life? The meaning of human life lies in the outcome of human lives, in the progress of mankind to accomplish good in a very meaningful way for the future generations of mankind. It's called progress in some terms. But Nicholas of Cusa is a very good example of this, and his arguments there are excellent when it comes to the question of religious argument. This would apply, even though he's a Christian, this applies in general to the religious conception of mankind, a proper conception. In any case, one has to think in this kind of terms that Nicholas of Cusa exemplifies. And you will find that great scientists and so forth all share in that kind of intention, because they're looking for a future of mankind, not just the future of some living person or persons. And therefore, I think this is the higher meaning of being human, is that we use our lives, express our own lives, by directing our lives to the intention that we are going to do something in the course of life which gives mankind a step above what mankind has been able to achieve before.
Okay. All right. Just to remind people on the call, you can get into the question and A queue by dialing *6, and we ask people to give us their first name and where they're from, and don't speak on a speakerphone, and speak as distinctly and at the best non-distorted volume you can so that everyone can hear what you're saying. So I'm going to take the next question up. Here we go.
Yes, this is Bruce from New York. I would like to ask, what is actually information to find out how can we go from New York to California, from Utah to Texas, Hawaii, and Alaska to tell Americans truly understand the Declaration of Independence. A friend of mine and I were talking about this a couple of days ago, and I think that's the appropriate question to ask true Americans in the situation that we're in. Do you really understand the Declaration of Independence and what it meant, and how Glass-Steagall could just throw all that in the garbage, basically? Would you elaborate on that, Mr. LaRouche? Appreciate it.
Yes, quite. I mean, for me, it's a very simple standard. We have the founding of the United States under a great statesman who actually set out the laws under which the Constitution was presented, and that's still there, and the tradition is there. So, for us in the United States, that tradition is clear. There were violations. For example, we had people who were dealt in slavery in the United States. Many of the leaders of the United States in the lower period and later were actually, evil people. That is, they were cruel. They committed crimes against humanity of all kinds, and so forth. We finally, with some presidents, we got free of that, and we keep struggling. Then we fell back into it. I would say the Bush family is an example of degeneration of the United States, morally and otherwise. But that kind of outlook is the one that we have to steer.
Okay, we'll take another question up here.
Yes, this is Michael from Northern Nevada. My wife and I have been longtime supporters of this organization. I've attended legislative sessions in Carson City. to support and encourage for the passage of Glass-Steagall, the reinstituting of the national banking system of credit, the development of major infrastructure projects like NWAPA. Over that time, I've talked with ranchers, farmers, small city and county officials, water masters, planners, even spoken with some local journalists. I have handed out and mailed to these individuals your plan for, full economic recovery, but over the last 2 years, received no response. And I believe the reason is I don't have a sense of credibility with these people or credentials, and therefore, they're only concerned about their own little constituency, their own small problems, their own re-election campaign, and so forth. And I'm sure there are other people maybe even on this call, or who would like to ask the question, what else can an individual possibly do?
Well, I'm doing it as far as I'm concerned. No, we've had a. Well, look, what's happened is this. You have the FBI. It's one of the institutions that's responsible for this problem. And what they do is they actually create a destruction of the ability of the American citizen to understand what he himself is all about. That's the problem. Now, our organization, my organization, has been a victim of this process. And we have, even in our own ranks, we have people who get stupid. And what we're doing, particularly in this discussion, which we do regularly every week at this point, is to bring into play, instead of taking a local kind of operation, which tends to be the case beforehand, which I've said no more. And we to go to a larger constituency, meaning a broader section of the United States citizenry in particular, and to get their voices into play here in order to kick the butts of some of our other members who don't do the job they should do but are still playing games with themselves. That's what we're doing. Now, the reason for this problem is the FBI. And the FBI is not the only institution that does it, but the FBI is notorious for this. The FBI demoralizes, is a system of demoralizing the American people in their lives. And therefore, they become confused. They become what they call practical rather than scientific. They say, this will be practical. And they think in small terms, and small terms, people who think in small terms, are easy victims for major institutions which, manipulate the population. You take just the case of the FBI is typical. There are other institutions in the United States who do the same thing. And you have similar phenomena in other nations. But in the United States, the FBI has been traditionally the marker, it's not unique, but it's the marker for brainwashing citizens by manipulating them, usually by fear, as we saw in the post-war period. Once Franklin Roosevelt was dead, the FBI took over and set up a system of police state mentality, which landed for most of that period, even under great presidents, which we had at that period. And we had presidents, who got assassinated. And these assassinations of presidents were not coincidences. They were the elimination of presidents like the Kennedys, the two Kennedy brothers, and other people of great talent and devotion. Remember, for example, President Kennedy himself faced with the threat that Russia and the United States were going to be thrust against each other, And what the effect would have been, if that had happened at that time, you would have had a world war, general mass death throughout much of the planet, including the United States. Kennedy saved that, prevented that. He induced the Russian government to understand what the effect of such a conflict would be. The Russian government then said yes, under Kennedy's pressure. What the Russian government did was destroy its war machine for thermonuclear war. And that's how we survived. Now we're at a stage where we have Obama, who is trying to drive a thermonuclear war internationally. And if Obama does that, succeeds in that, most of you will be dead in the morning following. Just as more so than what had happened in the way that Kennedy saved the United States and Russia simultaneously under Kennedy's influence, which got Khrushchev to back off. And that's the kind of world we live in. And that's the kind of situation we have to deal with right now.
Okay, all right. We'll take another question up here.
Hello. Yeah, my name's Todd, and I'm from Michigan. I agree with your 21st edition on the Darwinism versus creation. I think that's been a huge problem in the United States. Very similarly, I think the degradation of the family values have been a bad thing. A lot of children growing up in broken homes, I think, has been a huge part of our crime rate in the United States. And I was wondering what effect do you think joining the BRICS, if any, would that have on them two principles?
Well, the problem that you're talking about in human experience, and you see it in the United States, who are the people in the United States as citizens who are most likely to be criminals? Are they not the people who have no real vision of creating a progress for the human species, or the progress of their own community? That's the problem. Now, how does this happen? It happens because powerful interests in various nations believe in suppressing their own populations by brutalizing them, making them stupid, and then letting them play their frustrations against one another. When the proper destiny of mankind is that every human being should be steered by the aid of their society to achieve a higher standard of existence of the human species than the generation before them. That's the intention. In other words, mankind is not an animal. And mankind cannot be measured by animal standards. An animal species is a different thing than a human species. Absolutely different. There is no similarity directly, in terms functionally, between a human being and an animal. Under those conditions. So therefore, our challenge is mankind must make progress. And it's a progress of creativity, not opportunity, but creativity. For example, we now have, say in California, we have a governor in California who's really a criminal, because what he's doing is he is suppressing the clean water system of the California and adjacent areas. Why should we do that? California, you know what the history of California is. It starts out and it becomes the most powerful influence for productivity in the entire United States. in terms of foodstuffs and so forth. What happened? They're destroying it. Why? Well, because you had a couple of people like Yoho who came in imported from Europe and took over the governorship of California. And once with that governorship of this Yoho, California began to go down. And whereas the original governor in California, of relevance, was excellent, the one whose his son, the successor, is a bum and is actually devoted to destroying and killing the members of the citizens of California. So the question, the issue here is not these so-called practical questions in the ordinary sense. The point is that mankind has intrinsically a responsibility to evolve in mankind's skill to achieve things that mankind has never achieved before. And that's the lesson. That's the principle of physical science. What man has never achieved before must now be achieved. No animal can say that. No animal can do that. Only a human being. And human beings are the meaning of the existence of the galactic system. And once we understand that and say we have to develop every generation of living human beings must be in on the average stronger, more powerful, more competent than the generation before. Every parent, every parental family must be enabled to achieve a higher level of achievement than their children had been able to do.
Okay. All right, we're going to take another question up here. If I can get my little... Okay.
Hello?
Yes, hello.
Yes, hi. Hi, this is Anna from San Diego. It is a privilege to speak to you, Mr. LaRouche. I found you 2 years ago on the internet searching for the source of our problems in the earth. And of course, I found you, and I totally agree with everything what you say and what you found out. My question for you is, what is the general understanding of the British role in the politics, in the world affairs among the leaders of the countries in the world? How do they?
Anna, let me just interrupt you because your voice is breaking up a little bit. But you said, what is the role, the British role in world affairs? What did you say after that?
No, I'm saying how the international leaders perceive British role in the people in the other countries, the leaders of the other countries, if they understand who is behind all this misery that is happening in the world. And after usually very
all right, okay, Anna, let me interrupt you because I think I'm having a hard... Linda, can you hear her? Because it's kind of breaking up on my end. I can't hear it too well. Can you hear it all?
Breaking it up.
Now,
yeah, well, go ahead. Now it's okay.
Yes. So my question is about the understanding among the leaders of other countries, the role of Britain in international politics, in the politics of the world. How for instance, how Putin views the United States versus England, how the premier of other presidents of other countries.
I got it. You're asking how does Putin, amongst others, view the role of Great Britain in manipulating international politics?
Exactly.
Okay. Lynn, did you hear what I said? That she agreed Okay.
I got that. That's clear. Okay. I could answer that question in that way. Look, Putin is Putin. He's a leader of Russia. He's a leader of Russia who actually has successfully brought Russia back up from the despairing condition that it was in for a long period of time. Russia has now reached a point of progress where it's probably compared, shall we say, with Germany. Germany is a very high technology level. There are many problems in the German government, the practice there, but there's a core in German culture, which is a very good culture. It's probably one of the best ones in Europe in terms of performance. There are problems, there are big problems, but Germany is one of the most successful of these badly mangled governments. Now, Putin has brought Russia back up from the kind of worn-down, broken-down state it was in for a long period of time. I'm quite experienced with this Russia business. I've been involved in dealing with it one way and the other again. So I understand it very well. Russia is also very important because Russia and China are actually united in terms of collaboration. China has the largest population on the planet of any nation, and it has the highest rate of progress, of improvement of any nation right now. So these things are very important. Now, what our job is to take examples like Germany is a mangled, damaged, etc. thing, but it has the highest quality of performance in terms of production, in terms of economic progress of any nation. There are other smaller nations which have good characteristics and are useful. But for leading populations, Germany is now currently the most important one in Western Europe. But you also have not only China, but India. India is one of the largest and most powerful nations on the planet. Its population standard is not always so good, but it's going to develop very rapidly now, despite the problem of the recent heat wave they had there. But so these are facts. Egypt has become very powerful in its own domain. So therefore, what we have to do is understand that if we see these things in these terms, and come back to our own United States, and say, how can we make our United States, which was once a leader of the world in achievement, how can we bring that nation in its ruined and tattered and rotten condition it has today, which has happened especially over the course since the beginning of the 20th century? How do we save the United States? How do we save the people of the United States? How do we save the future of the people of the United States? Well, I think we can do it. But we have to have a consciousness of what that mission is. We have to have an understanding of what we're talking about. What do we have to do to bring the United States back out of the rubble field it has become intellectually, and bring it again to be what it was at its high point in terms of the beginning of the 20th century. And that's what we have to do. And we have to look at nations in terms of what's happening to nations. For a long period of time, nations have been considered as being sort of insulated, totally separate from one another. No, it's different. For example, the case of China, India, Russia, and so forth, and some nations, major nations in South America. These nations are now coming together what's called BRICS formation. This formation is one in which is what the Chinese refer to it as the win-win concept, that every nation should have its own independent view, win, but it should also have a concern for the influence of the other nation, win. And this thing is spreading throughout Asia, not all of Asia, but much of Asia. It's spreading in South America, it's spreading in some parts of Central America, and it should be spreading inside the United States. We can get Obama thrown out of office, get a competent president or presidency in place instead of Obama, and we can have in the United States its own win-win option, and where the United States will have the best level of achievement that it ever has had so far.
Okay, that's a good challenge for everybody here on the call. So we're going to take the next question up.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, this is George. Are you?
Yes, go ahead, George.
Oh, okay. I didn't know you were on me now. I'm George from Richfield, Minnesota. I'm 87 years old, been in business for 57 years. I've been following Mr. LaRouche for many years, ever since he worked with Dr. Moon, the physicist. And I'm a Republican, but I'm fed up with the Republican Party. I was fed up with the Democratic far before I was fed up with the Republican Party. And we have now a corporation. We're run by the Washington, D.C., which is a corporation which I believe is controlled by England. And we're in big trouble today. Now, I still have over 100 employees. I've built 3 businesses that have fought government subsidies, and they just kicked me in the teeth for it. But I have over 100 good employees left yet. I'm 87 years old. I can ride bicycles. I can climb ladders, and I'm working to try and save this country. I lost my wonderful wife 4 years ago, who loved the business also. We're in the transportation business, and one of the communist planks of the Communist Manifesto is before communists can take over in America, the government has to own and operate all public transportation. And we own the last private-owned public transit system in the entire United States of America. And I've spent over $1 million in the last 2 years and 6 months suing the government, and we're going to win. But I tell you, I would like to have a dialogue with you, Mr. LaRouche, sometime. I've always thought you were a great man. I haven't agreed with everything. And I think you've given the Democrats too much credit, and one is Franklin Delano Roosevelt. I know he had a lot of good points about him. And you know more than I do, probably, but I would wish you'd call me sometime. I've supported you for ages, and you've had a lot of good people working with you over the years. I've been to your meeting even in New York and Chicago and St. Paul.
Oh, good.
And but I think you and I need to have a talk.
I think so too.
All right. Well, George. Now that you have Mr. LaRouche on the phone, is there one burning question you've always wanted to ask him?
Well, I don't know. I can't think of the burning question right now, but the one man called in and wondered what we should do. I say we should get out of the corporation, get rid of the Federal Reserve, and as far as the FBI, somebody talked about the FBI. There's wonderful people that work for the FBI. There are wonderful people who work for the IRS, and I've been targeted not by the FBI, but I've been targeted by the IRS and targeted by the banks. And we have, we're in good shape, but the government's tried every way to drown us out by subsidizing our competition.
I think you probably have a problem sometimes with Wall Street.
Okay. All right. Well, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I was going to say I thought he would have some problems with Wall Street.
Okay.
But I would certainly appreciate talking to him.
All right. Great. Well, I'll get that. I'll get that across to him. We can take another question up here. Here we go. Okay.
Louisiana. Give me the
Fred.
status update on O'Malley and our people working directly with O'Malley on economic policy, the Glass-Steagall plus the physical economy.
Fred, could you repeat that again?
O'Malley and our staff working with him. What is the status of our staff with the EIR working with O'Malley on the physical economy?
Okay. I got it. Okay. Lynn, what he was saying, he asked what's the status. That was Fred from Louisiana, and he was asking what is the status of our working with O'Malley on physical economy?
Okay. I understand, Fred. I know Fred. Okay. But I don't know if that's the right term to put. I see that Bush has just been sort of dumped by his own circles because he's incompetent. He's admittedly incompetent, which is sort of an achievement. All the other Bushes were, except Prescott, who was a murderer, were pretty much incompetent. So this guy has been caught with incompetence by his own circles. That's good. Get rid of this guy. But I think that also there are other contenders for the presidency right now who, by my understanding, my guess, more than guess, they're not competent. Now, what are we looking for? The O'Malley question has come up. Now, we're talking about O'Malley as being some kind of a magic guy who's going to solve all your problems. I think that would be a mistake, and I think O'Malley would understand that as I do, more or less. The issue here is we got to think in terms of a presidential system, which means you have an actual president. No, phony stuff in that stuff. An actual president, but a president who is interacting constantly with a team, which is the presidential system. Now, the presidential system is a lot of talents which are qualified and work together in order to move the United States and other things forward. I think that at this point, I don't think Hillary's going to make it. She's got too many mistakes, and she has too many habits which are mistaken. She looks like she's a big thing right now, but I would say her performance is the more that the people find out what she's doing, the less they're going to support her, because she's not a competent leader. She does not understand how to be a competent leader. So I think she's sort of eliminated. Bush is eliminated. The retinue of the Republican Party, it's a mess. There are Republicans in there who I would even consider as should be considered as part of the presidential system. Not because they're Republicans as such, but because they happen to be Republicans who are worth something. Rand Paul is a tempting example of that kind of thing. Other people in that category are also tempting choices. But if we bring the right talents together in the right conjunction, and we have a successful formation of O'Malley as a presidential candidate, I would say that is probably, I'm not going to give you any final answer on this thing, but I'd say probably, given the condition, knowing that Bush is in deep trouble, and his own ranks are disgusted with him, and Hillary's not going to be able to withstand reality. She may have a lot of money there, but she's not going to be able to do the job. We know that. So therefore, O'Malley probably is the best prospect right now. But this does not mean O'Malley per se. It means O'Malley, if he's chosen, O'Malley will be a president who has a whole array of talent which are working to a common purpose and a common goal. As pretty much model which is Franklin Roosevelt had in his term in office. A Franklin Roosevelt-like government. And that's our best option. Now, this would mean we have a foreign policy also, which goes with the agreement with the principle of the, which I've just referred to, the win-win concept. We no longer have nations which are incel dominant over large parts of the planet. We're going to have nations which work together with their own opinions, their own experience, their own policies, but which consider other nations with their own policies, with the idea that these different groups which form these sets of nations will interact to effect common ends for mankind. Common ends for mankind. And that's what's required.
All right, I'm gonna call on someone. I have a sneaking feeling this will be almost like a follow-up to that question. Here we go.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Hello.
Yes. Go ahead.
Hi. Good evening, Mr. LaRouche. This is Jessica White from Brooklyn, New York, and my question does, or my statement and my question does enter into something that you just talked about. It stems from the conference that we just had this past weekend, and I wasn't able to ask the question there. The conference was excellent. I thought the speakers were very good, and of course Helga was very inspirational, and I've kind of fallen behind in my organizing a little bit lately because I have some family issues. I have a new grandson, and he has some medical issues. So I'm kind of, dealing with that, but I was very inspired by Helga and the other people on the panel, and I'm going to get back to it. I am a delegate to the United Federation of Teachers, the UFT, and I, along with other people who helped get the resolution passed through the union for our support for Glass-Steagall in the UFT. Now, my concern is that I know that we are not endorsing a candidate, a person. What we are about is the presidency of the United States and what that stands for. And we have our 4 laws and our tenets that we believe in, and we're trying to get the people of the United States on board. The thing is, I go to delegate meetings. There are over 600 members at these delegate meetings, and they are representing over 3,000 teachers.
Yep.
They usually vote for things to endorse these candidates. They vote in who we're going to endorse. I see that what will probably happen as people come out of the woodwork for, and place themselves into the candidacy for president, what I see happening is that they'll go along with Hillary. It's a go along to get along kind of thing. And they'll vote on endorsing Hillary kind of like mindless foolishness. See, how will I and others that believe as I believe and will help bring them into reality, bring people, not just in the union, but other people in general, into reality? What types of strategies can we use to keep people, they know that Hillary and others are not the person or the people that we should be endorsing. They know that, but they're delusional, and they're sheep, and they want to go along to get along, and we have to bring them out of that and explain what the presidency of the United States really is.
Yeah, that's right.
What types of strategies can I know other people on the call probably understand what I mean.
Well,
what can
now
I do?
you've got the question of the teachers' union. Now, the teachers' union is a complex process. I think probably you'll find in Manhattan area one of the best concentrations from among the senior teachers. I don't know about some of the younger teachers, but I do know about the senior teachers. And I know that as a group, they have generally stood up to try to defend what they understand is their mission, even despite a lot of pressure against them. So I don't think there's a problem there. I think that what they're doing is right, and I think that they will automatically tend to converge upon anything that they recognize is the proper presidency of the United States to occur now. And that, I think that's the lawful way it should occur. But the point is that once we understand that and say we agree on that idea, then we have to go to work to make sure that we're working on behalf of agreeing with that idea, not only among teachers, but among other relevant parts of society, which will come together. Because what we need, the problem we've had is we've had, wheelers and dealers for various reasons, and they get stuck into the presidential system because somebody's pet project or candidate is involved there. We need a system which is a pure system of the presidency. We need a president, but the president has to conform to a certain mission orientation and has to do it effectively. But you also need a battery of people who are qualified to do the various parts of the job which are required to make the whole thing work. And that's exactly what we have to do. I think we can write off certainly Bush. He's written himself off publicly, and all of his supporters have been complaining that he's no damn good, which is probably a good term to use. I don't think the Bushes were any good at any time. Prescott Bush was evil, and most of his offspring were stupid, but also evil. So the point, I think we should not have really a problem. And I think that there's no resistance if we can pull the people who of various groups in society who already have some idea of what needs about. You get the discussion going among those groups. What do they want for the people of the United States from the standpoint of what those institutions they represent amount to? That's the way to do it. We need a system, a presidency, which is a true presidency. A president is there. The president the function is to lead in coordinating a larger presidency. These larger presidencies must work in concert with one another in order to make this thing work. And I think, that O'Malley has shown inklings of that, or perhaps better than inklings. And I've seen nothing else so far on the screen to support. So I think that if we say, well, we're not going to say that O'Malley is going to be the next president. I wouldn't say that yet. I don't have all the tips and things that I need to do to come to a definite conclusion. But I say what I do know. He's the only one on the scene which so far has shown the potential to become a president. But that is conditional upon having a presidency formed. And you're not trusting one man, one person. You're trusting a team of people who are organized around a common purpose, pretty much like what a good teaching program is.
Okay, great. I know, Lynn, that we have, I don't think he's on the call, but we have a very long-time activist who I believe this evening is at a small gathering in a town in Iowa with Martin O'Malley, so we hope to get a report from him. Hope he might get a chance to speak to O'Malley himself. So maybe we'll be able to get this is a local meeting in Marshalltown, Iowa, going on tonight. So I don't know if we'll get the report here on our call, but we hope to get it in the next couple of days. So I got another question coming up here. Here we go. Okay.
LaRouche,
Yes.
This is Jose Pollack from Middletown, New York. How are you? Hello,
Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Go ahead. Speak up a bit if you can, sir.
Actually, I'm sorry. I'm on speaker. Let me take it off speaker.
Thank you.
Again, my name is Jose Pollack. I'm from Middletown, New York. I first want to commend you in all your efforts, you and your whole team. I am part of this team. I am proud of what we're trying to do here. I hear a lot of different stories or a lot of different reasoning or resolutions somewhat that can be potentially successful. I think ultimately what it all boils down to is what it's always been since the beginning of time. It's the battle between good and evil. We can sit here and discuss these matters for weeks, months, years even. Mr. LaRouche has been at it for, 50, 60 years?
Yeah.
We can discuss all these different matters and, amongst other leaders of the world. We could go into the communities and the inner cities and discuss these matters. What it all boils down to is the battle between good and evil. What people need to realize is, what are you made of personally? What do you have within you that's going to make a change for the better? It's unfortunate that this world is run by corrupted people. It's unfortunate that the media is controlled by these corrupted people. It's unfortunate that most people in this world, thrive or live or die off of the American dollar. All that is unfortunate. It ultimately means nothing. It all means nothing. It's what we have inside of us is what will ultimately lead us to our little slice of heaven, so to speak. And I get it. I get what you're saying. Yes, we do need a system. However, there's so many things that need to take place at the same time in order for this to be successful. And unfortunately, I just feel it may be too little too late. I am very optimistic, and I like to think that there's always a chance. With everything that's going on in this world and the control that they have literally over people's minds, the distraction of social networking and video games and the food that we eat that literally distorts our minds. It's so it's on such a massive scale. All of the evil that surrounds us.
We got. Did you get that, Len?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Okay. Well, look, that is not a problem. Not if we approach things properly. It's really not the problem. The problem is the failure to deal with things that people are proposing. That's the trap. If you're trying to talk about what some people are proposing variously and trying to pick that out, you're going to lose. Because that kind of approach doesn't work. It's intrinsically a failure. There are principles, however, which are knowable principles, which are little known, unfortunately, and little regarded. So trying to come up with a practical solution in the usual term of practical is wrong. You already have to deal with defining and choosing a conception of policy which stands on its own legs. For example, we just had this case where one of my associates originated the provision of the galactic water system. Now, what is that? Now, that's a few people in the world who know what the galactic water system is in practical terms as well as theoretical principle terms, which I happen to be informed of. which is why I'm saying this right now. All right. So we understand we had a progress in civilization. The highest level we knew about our system was that of Kepler, Johannes Kepler. Johannes Kepler, in that time of his life, was the first man to define what the solar system actually is. But that was only the solar system. What we've had now developed since that time is this idea of the conception, an actual practical conception, which is called the galactic system. That is, the water system that mankind lives on is basically located in the galactic system, not the water system as we know it. Not the moisture system as we know it. And therefore, if we want to deal with the challenges which mankind faces, as in weather conditions and so forth now, which are water conditions, then we have to approach the matter from a standpoint of galactic principles. Now, some of my associates have been working on the question of applying the galactic principles to water throughout the planet Earth already. What they're doing so far in practice is modest. What they're doing in terms of principle is serious, but requires more development. But the understanding that we are depending not on the system of Earth as we see it, we've known it before, not as known by Kepler, but as known as the galactic system. So therefore, that's the kind of way you have to approach some of these problems. And that's been the case in all important scientific progress. So what we have to do is we have to say, what is the system of social process and of physical processes within social processes? What is the system that we have to use to solve the challenges which confront mankind now? So you don't come up with and say, what is the pragmatic solution? The pragmatic solution, we're beyond the hope of finding success with a pragmatic solution. We have to work with an actual scientific solution, such as what is I illustrate as the case that we've now demonstrated, and a number of scientists have demonstrated this, and both in principle and in practice. We now know that the water system of Earth, of all parts of the Earth, depend on the galactic system, not the water system of Earth itself. And therefore, we need to approach things in that way, which is the way of a scientific principle, actual scientific principle. And this is only an illustration that I'm giving. All scientific progress depends upon the same method, as it did for Kepler in his time, as it applies now for the galactic principle today. And we have to look at the politics of things in terms of these kinds of considerations. What can we do to make planet Earth and the galaxy produce the effects which mankind requires? And this means the behavior of mankind as well as everything else. We need to have a science driver center, which is a consulting point, like a scientific research capability, to teach us and help us understand what the measures are that we should be planning in our plan for the United States, for example, today. What do we need for the next generations? And define that thing and say, okay, we're going to have a program which fits those designs. And we need that. We can find from the past history, from earlier history, you can find many examples where the so-called practical solution is rotten. It's a rotten failure, where you have to have a scientific or higher level of understanding of mankind. And that's what we have to do. That's the only way we can guarantee that we'll produce something that will work.
Well, Lynn, I think that your last response certainly gives everybody on the call a clear focus of what the intervention of you and our movement has to be now and in the upcoming period. And it brings us really to the end of our time that we've decided on here this evening. I don't know if you wanted to put any last final touches on what you've covered tonight, Lynn, because obviously I think you've given everybody a tremendous amount to think about and a very, very clear sense of our intervention, both in this country and on an international level. So did you want to, in conclusion, Lynn, add anything here at the end of the call and the discussion this evening?
I've just put one thing, a reflection. We came into the question toward the close of these series of interlocutors with the education system, includes in the New York City area, educational system, a fairly high level of organization, is one of the best institutions for this purpose in the United States. That's a relevant example. We need something like that in terms of a scientifically competent view of what the policy of the United States must be for the benefit of the people now and for the future. The same thing. We need to think in those terms, not the so-called gimmick terms. Too many presidencies, too many politicians come up with a gimmick, and none of these gimmicks have been successful. The territory of the United States is strewn with useless, worn-out gimmicks. We need a scientifically sound approach. As like example, as the case of the water question, the relationship which was first came to be understood by Kepler, and more recently as the galactic water system. We need that kind of approach. We are living under the galactic system. With the solar system is a subsidiary of the galactic system. We therefore have to understand how we relate to the subject of solar system and galactic system. We have to find practical problems defined and practical solutions. That we can do. Competent science can do that. And that's what we need right now.
Okay, wonderful. Well, I would just simply say, for those of you who are on the phone here at the end of this discussion, that I'm sure that you will want to get this recording, circulate this to your friends. We have been getting these posted on the website. And again, I would like to just mention there is a major international conference coming up this weekend in Paris, and I would ask everyone to stay tuned and look for the coverage of that event. So again, Lynn, thanks very much for being with us this evening. It's been very, very informative and important, and we look forward to talking to you again next week.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Good night, everybody. That's it for our call this evening. Good night, everyone.